I'm thinking it's hard to respond to somebody letting me know, pointing out to something about I may not have contact with myself, or I may have lost myself. If I don't have a self, how do I even receive that?
Well, again, it's presence of self. So I think you need a really good therapist that specializes in trauma. I'm going to be quite honest. I think someone that does maybe Gestalt work, but somatic work, EMDR, tapping, anything to get that person back in their body. Because if you can be in your body, you don't have to run from your body.
It starts right here. Start right here.
Welcome back to Start Right Here. I'm Thom Rutledge, and with me is Dr. Alan Berger. Alan, how you doing? And I'm going to let Alan introduce our guest today. Someone's been brave enough to come talk with us today.
That's right. And let's hope she won't have to be too brave as this conversation goes on, and that she can just be relaxed and share with us a lot of her insights and wisdom. I'm doing better. Everybody's asking how you recovering from COVID. And right now, the major symptom I'm left with, I still haven't recovered all of my taste yet, but that is not stopping me from eating, unfortunately. I wish that was one of the effects. But the main thing I'm left with is fatigue. I get these bouts of unbelievable fatigue. It's like all my energy drops. I mean, I sit there, I must look catatonic in terms of the level of the low level of energy I feel. Jess says, "Are you okay?" And I go, "No, I'm just fatigued. I can hardly move off the couch." I mean, it gets to that point, but thank God those periods they may be at the most last 2 hours. And then all of a sudden I seem to come out of them. It's weird. They've got this weird rhythm going on. So,
well, it could be worse. You could have little kids.
Well,
wait,
I do. Yeah, right. It's like, Daddy, they decorate me now. They thought I was the Christmas tree is what happened the other day. I was sitting so still. They just started hanging ornaments on my ears.
I think that's great. They should. I want a picture.
Well, look, we're so excited that we've got a dear friend of mine and someone I've known, and kind of we known each other for 15, 20 years now, I think, Sherry. It's been a long time. Sherry Gaba is with us today. She's the author of a new book that's out. And this is your second book, I understand, Sherry, right? Yeah. And it's called Love Smacked. And we're going to ask you about it here in a minute. But, look, your career has been incredible. You're a licensed therapist. You have a very busy private practice. You've worked with treatment centers. You've done so many things. And then you were also a part of Celebrity Rehab. Right back then. And I saw some of the sessions you did on that with some of the spouses of people, and you've just been doing a lot of great work in the field for a long time, Sherry. But what are you excited about now? Could we start with that?
I'm excited to be here with you two guys because I have known you for such a long time. Yeah. And we've kind of went around the same circles, and I just respect your work, and I'm so happy you have a podcast. I think this is so important, and I'm so happy to be right here, right now with you two.
Well, that's wonderful. That's
right back at you.
Right back at you. We were excited. Now you're our second guest. Actually,
He's our first guest, really, because John doesn't count because he's just our buddy.
That's true. She's our guest.
It's like the first guest we have to be polite and pay attention to our manners for.
And don't expect Thom to be polite all the time, but he'll try to clean it up. He's got that.
Sherry knows me. It's okay. He's a
Texas boy at heart.
I'm so honored. So you've been mostly just doing like therapy chatting on your podcast.
It's been me and Alan. Alan and I love to talk, and people have been listening, and we're grateful is that. But it's like this thing has been just an amazing therapeutic thing through the COVID thing for us. Is we have come to depend on each other. It's almost like we call each other up on Sundays just for a support call, and we put it on a podcast. And we've also just really enjoyed, and I would love to have you be part of this conversation today and maybe other times too. But just we also find ourselves just talking about, as having been in this business for so long, just how we're still fascinated with this work, how much we love continuing to learn and new things and see things in different ways, and how much we just still enjoy doing what we do, and how grateful we are that that we get to do this for a living. So it's like I think there's just an excitement, and I know you have that too, because you're every contact I've ever had or everything I've ever read from you has been just full of that kind of enthusiasm.
Well, it's the variety, we aren't just therapists. We do so many other things,
Right.
such as this podcast or online summits or writing books, or
Mhm.
Alan, well, both of you speak and do workshops,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
I haven't done as much of that.
Mhm.
And then, doing a television show, being a media expert. I mean, we're so blessed, and we're old and we're still doing this. So this is a good
Yes.
thing.
That's true. The
Really
old is there.
Well, that comes with the gratitude. I mean, the idea is we get, I think there's just a certain amount of gratitude there's a certain level of gratitude you get that comes with advancing age. It's like, and just being able to stay in there in perspective. And it's like, it is part of it. I love that. It's fun that gratitude comes with humility too.
Sure, for sure.
If you're paying attention, that's how you can kind of tell whether somebody's paying attention. If they've been at it a long time and they think they know everything, then bit of a problem.
Well, when I think of the word gratitude, of course, I think of the program, and I think we are so blessed that we have programs in our lives, because that's what's getting us through this COVID even. I mean, without those tools, without those things, I mean, you can even be a therapist, but if you don't have those tools of living and being able to be grateful for just exactly where we are, and accepting what is, all of that stuff makes such a difference during this time, I think.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that Alan and I talked about early on was I shared what a client of mine had said to me, really probably in March or early April, and I was sharing that I was doing the remote stuff, and I was saying that I found myself feeling more tired than usual, even though what I was doing was actually the same thing, just through remote ways of doing it. But she said something that was just very obvious, and we both just tuned into that immediately. She said, have you ever gone through something of this length of time in which you're counseling people in a crisis that you're in too?
Yeah.
And it's immediately, it was just like, oh, duh. No wonder. It's because we're processing it, we're working it, we're needing the exact same support everybody else is.
Yeah, for sure. I was just going to say, when you said Zoom, I think you said remote, like we're all doing. I think that's also adding to being tired, because we're not in person and we're on computers all day, and we're not getting the hugs and the support. We're not connecting in person. It's just not the same. So it is a little more stressful for sure.
Yeah.
No, you make such a good point, because there's an energy transfer, isn't there? When you're with someone and you're live with someone, there's this virtual is great. There's a lot of great things to it, because we can do this and not have to be in the same room with each other. But that energy transfer does not come across. And that's something I've missed a lot of.
Yeah,
I know. I've found ways to start to compensate for that, right? Is trying to bring more of the energy from my end. And I'm finding ways but that's a great point, Sherry.
Yeah.
That's a different thing, isn't it? It's that we don't get that nurturing that we get.
Well, what I notice what I'm doing is I'm doing more presence with them to start the session, like some kind of grounding technique or something to just get us connected to each other energetically, even before we start the session, because they're not in the room with us. So that really helps.
I love that, because what you're doing, because first of all, you're doing what we all need to be doing all the time, which is acknowledging the reality of what, accepting the things we cannot change, basically, and saying, okay, so let's and change, so let's work with that. I love that idea of just owning it at the first and say, let's make this extra effort.
Yes.
To do it. Yeah.
For presence, for awareness, for connection, which is what we all want.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because yesterday I have this training program in Gestalt therapy that meets once a month. And yesterday the topic, so I give a little didactic presentation at the beginning, do a demonstration, and then we talk about what happens. So the topic yesterday was what happens at the point that we make contact with someone else. And because that contact, right, and you were just talking about it now, and I loved how you described it, how we show up to that contact is going to determine how valuable that experience is going to be for us at that time. So I love what you're saying is that you even did it with us. I love what I said. Hey, what are you excited about? You said, I'm excited about being here right now. And that's that was so cool though, because it was, you were so present and centered to it. You didn't go outside, you stayed right with us. And it really excited me. When you said that, I felt that. I mean, it was really cool. And that's, what we talk about is that's one of the things about making contact is it's about being right here, right now, like you said. And I love that, Sherry. That was great.
And then, what did we all learn when we went to school to become therapists? Start where the client is, start where they are. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're just starting where we are.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. And the cool thing about that, when you're talking about that with tuning, talk about that moment of joining them, is when we're starting with the client, that's where we have to be really careful, not because we're human beings, we will have assumptions about where that client is. And so we need to be sure, especially with those assumptions, that we check those out. They maybe you're right. Sometimes I tell people that assumptions can be true false kind of things. I kind of imagine you're doing this or thinking this, And
it's funny you say that because, I know our topic today is going to be codependency, and that is what codependency is in a way. We're all of a sudden becoming so other focused that we're not in our presence. We're already, we already have perceptions about what's going on. We're already trying to control it and manipulate it and assume. And, that's kind of, I guess we're codependent therapists if we're not careful.
Well, sure. And that let's go there. Let's talk about defining codependency, because it's a word that has been so useful and so amazing through since it's been around in my career. I just realized my career is much longer than that. So I'm older than codependency. It gets to be sort of almost cliche. So people kind of toss it off. And they don't, I think, so give us an operational definition of codependency.
There are so many. I'm just going to kind of tell you my thoughts about it.
Okay.
First of all, the one thing I want to say though, and I was just starting to say this recently because I realize there's a lot of shame around the word. And so even before I start, I want people, if they identify as being codependent, please don't take on the shame of it. It doesn't mean there's, that you woke up one day and wanted to be a codependent, just like, you didn't want to wake up one day and be an addict. I mean, it's just part of your story. It used to be defined as you were the partner of the addict, so to speak. That was sort of the definition in the beginning when Melody Beattie wrote Codependent No More. And it was all about, you're enabling and you're trying to control, fix, and manipulate your partner because of their quote disease. But it's really much broader now. Now it's more like a loss of self, because you have become other focused, and we'll probably get into some issues around trauma. But if you grow up with some kind of trauma where you were abused or neglected or abandoned, so of course you feel invisible, and then everything becomes about everything outside of you. So you're kind of lost yourself. So that to me is the best definition of codependency, is being other focused, losing a sense of self, not even know, and the healing is finding your authentic self.
That's one of the reasons why I struggle with labels sometimes.
Right.
People want me to throw out a diagnosis, and I say, I don't really like to think in those terms. I like to think about what you're struggling with and what you need to do to turn things around in your life. That's been the big negative about putting labels on things.
And a lot of people don't even know what it means. So the word, that's why it's such a large word, and it has so many meanings. Dr. Rob Weiss, I'm sure you know him. He's, in our world. He's now talking about something called propendence, which is really it's really taking the stigma out of the word codependency. He feels there is a lot of stigma around the word. Like there's something wrong with you, that you love your partner enough to help them, get sober. Like, well, what's wrong with that? You love your partner. Why are we labeling you're a codependent when you're actually trying to be loving and supportive? And of course, then it gets to the point of, well, when is the loving too much and when is it starting to hurt you? And that's where I share my story. I was married to an alcoholic that relapsed many, many times. And then I started to get really sick because, just like addiction, my life became unmanageable because I was trying to control a situation I had no control over. And so I got kidney stones and staph infection, and I started losing hair and UTIs and just all kinds of really awful things were happening to me mentally, physically, and spiritually because I was obsessed with helping that person get sober. So that's when I think it gets a little dangerous. Like, no, I don't want to label codependency. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Loving somebody that you might be focused on in terms of helping them heal. But at the same time, you know, you don't want to lose yourself.
I remember doing a group therapy thing back in the days when we did groups all day long back in the 1900s, and it was we were doing the thing about codependency, and we had a fella in the group that you know was not, most people had read all these books and done all this stuff, and this guy hadn't, and he sat in he's, you know, that's back when we sat on the floor because, you know, because my joints didn't hurt yet, so I was still in the pillows on the floor, and we were talking about the codependency, and this guy he said something that always stuck with me. He said, you reminded me of it, Sherry. He said, I don't know what this codependency stuff is, but he says, if in order to recover from it, I have to become an asshole, he said, I don't want any part of it. And since then, I've been making the point to people. It's like, by the way, if all the things that ail you, that you may go way overboard loving somebody, you know, it's like, right. we can make adjustments, but it's like, that does not need to be an insult.
And I just, you know, I'm talking about a partner, but what about a parent that has a child that's struggling? Are you supposed to just stop loving your child? Are you supposed to just, you know, so it's really navigating between supporting them and not losing yourself.
Right.
Is really what it comes down to. But there are issues around control and a lot of denial. Denial is a huge thing. You know, when you think of relationships and codependent relationships, loving who you think someone is rather than who they really are. That's a huge part of it.
Who you want them to be.
Who you want them to be, exactly. And just like, see, to me, it really replicates addiction, right? Because addiction, you're in a denial about your disease. So the codependent is in denial about the person they're obsessing over.
Right, absolutely. So it turned out tequila didn't really make me good looking and a good dancer. I was wrong about that, it turns out. Well, as they tell me.
Might have made you a better dancer. I dance great, and I can imagine you were a better dancer when you had.
I love that you guys use, you know, this platform to also like make fun of ourselves.
I know we gotta laugh.
We don't know how not to do that.
I mean, really, you know, it's so
fun. Look, we bring humor in, and I'm sure you do too, into our work, because you know it's finding that rhythm about, you know, getting intense and heavy with someone, but then also backing off and being able to assimilate it and enjoy the experience we're having. But, you know, I wanted to build on what you were saying, Sherry, because there's so much, it is such an important part of us to be of value to someone we care about. See, and it's a shame that got labeled as wrong. So that's the part where I really agree with Rob, is that part, you're never going to remove that from a parent with a child, right? You know, a relationship, you know, I love the way that Dr. Carl Whitaker described it as a fragile bond, right? If you and I are in a love relationship together, that's going to depend on how we connect with each other, how we are with each other, how we deal with each other, how we deal with life together, all that. That's going to determine the stability of that bond. But with a child, there's not a fragile bond. That bond, if you've had somewhat of you know, an attachment to that child, a healthy bonding to that child, I mean, you know, it doesn't matter what's going on. I say Jeffrey Dahmer's mother loved him, even though he was eating his neighbors. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. That's still my boy. I mean, you know, that's my boy.
That's my boy.
No, that's the truth of it, right? You know, that bond is so. That's my boy.
That's right. We're leaving that in, Patrick.
But you know, it's a fragile bond in a relationship. It is a very different experience. But we need to honor that desire to be of value. It's an important part of us.
Right.
Important part of me. I know it's an important part of you. That's part of what brought us into this work, and that we do is we want to see what we can do to help people figure out what they're struggling with and take the next step in their life. So right on.
Well, what both of you are talking about too is just we need to honor and remind ourselves and even each other that all of this is so subjective. it's like, because I think the place where we get into judging it, whether it be as therapists or, kind of classify things and put things in pigeonholes and stuff, sometimes with good intention, but, and I don't think there's a better example of a parent loving a child who's troubled and having trouble with that. It's like, that's a very subjective thing for somebody to come in and just say, to have that attitude of, well, you have to do this.
Well,
I remember when the tough love movement came in, and that was all they were. They were just there to tell everybody how to be tough loving. It's like, and I'm a fan of tough love, and it's the heart of my recovery with myself. But it's like, it's very subjective.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's why the caveat of when have you lost yourself in all of this is so important.
Yeah.
Because if you are losing yourself, then how can you even take care of somebody else if you've lost yourself, your sense of self, your sense of who you are? And that's what happens. And that's when when it becomes obsessive. And that is part of it. It can be very obsessive, trying to help somebody else that you love.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Sherry.
Let me just say one other thing. It also is seen a lot in relationships with narcissists. So I'm talking about the addict, but there is a dance between codependents and narcissists, because the narcissist needs all this attention. The codependent needs to be needed. The codependent doesn't want to be abandoned, afraid, completely in terror of abandonment. The narcissist knows that. And so codependents are really, prey to abusive relationships. I'll give an example. My father died. My mother got with a homeless guy, a con man, a sociopath, a narcissist. She was a victim because of her own, not only grief, but she was a codependent and wanted to be loved and needed attention and needed to be validated and needed to be told she was beautiful. And this guy came right in. So this is a huge topic that I've also been talking about, is this relationship pattern where narcissists and codependents kind of find each other and they kind of use each other, but it can be really like dangerous.
Right. It is. Yeah, it is. It's, I told somebody one time, I said, the reason I believe in God is because somebody's messing with us. This cannot be a complete accident that we find ourselves in these, these relationships that are actually in the broader strokes are fairly understandable and predictable in terms of how they fit together. Like you're saying, it's that dance thing.
Codependents and narcissists, they both have abandonment issues. They're really the same, just two sides of the coin on how it manifests.
How they've responded to it.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
My mother had a horrible childhood. She was neglected. So when my father died, it was as if she was that child again. She just was lost. And then this man, had his own abandonment issues, didn't have a father. His mother had been married many times. He was from Russia. He was Jewish and dealt with a lot of anti-Semitism. And so he had so many issues and they just found each other and it just fit. But it was fatal because eventually, I won't even go into it, but we had to go to court for a couple of years to get a restraining order on him because, he was a predator. He was trying to get trying to take over my mother's physical, spiritual, mental, financial life. And so this is how serious codependency can be, really.
Yes, that's a really good point too, because that's another thing that could happen because the word is so common that we can kind of toss it off as something that's not that serious. We go like, no, this is like addiction when we say, no, this is potentially fatal.
Well, remember when we were learning in school about domestic violence and they'd say, well, the stereotype was, well, how could she stay with him? How could she stay with him? And it's like, well, let's look at who she is and let's look at the relationship she's in and the abuse and knocking down her self-esteem. And maybe she never had self-esteem, obviously, in the first place, or maybe she did and then it just got ripped from her, so it's about not judging, and that's why I talk about early trauma with this subject, because if we understand our early trauma, we'll be more aware of how we can be vulnerable to these toxic relationships.
Say more about that. Say more about the what you do with the trauma stuff.
So when you don't receive what you need as a child, we know this all as therapists, if you're abused or you have emotionally unavailable parents, or you become a little adult, like a little parentified child, this sets you up for really a difficult adult relationships. Victims of trauma have a false reality to themselves. They don't even know who their true self is. They don't trust their emotions because they can't even access what their true feelings are because nobody validated them. Nobody noticed them, acknowledged them. They didn't count. And then, like I talked about earlier in our interview, you become other focused. So that's going to set you up for being a quote codependent, someone who's going to focus outside of yourself instead of within. So a codependent focuses on everyone around them. They are the giver. They're not necessarily not the taker. They're always giving. They lose themselves in this other person. And it's very difficult for them to have a real intimate relationship. Both of them, the codependent and the person that are in the relationship, both have intimacy issues. We often hear, well, oh, he was not available. He doesn't know how to be intimate, or she, didn't know how to be intimate. Well, you picked that person. So two of you, are sort of lost from yourself, from a connection. You know what it is? It starts, as we started our interview today, a connection with self. And I know I'm kind of going all over the place here, so I hope you're tracking me, but does that kind of make sense?
No, here's what I'm tracking. No, I think you're doing great. And it's like and by the way, if you're very linear, I can't follow you. I have a pinball brain. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, I would doze off if you were just linear. It's like, I go like, I'm sorry, I can't keep up with this. But no, one of the places I'm fascinated with is you talk about the loss of self and not having contact with yourself. So I keep coming back as you're talking to being curious about, I don't know how exactly you present that to a client, for instance, or how you might present it in the book. Maybe it's in the Love Smacked. I mean, it's like, how do people respond? Because I'm thinking it's hard to respond to somebody letting me know, pointing out to something about I may not have contact with myself, or I may have lost myself. If I don't have a self, how do I even receive that?
Well, again, it's presence of self. So I think you need a really good therapist that specializes in trauma. I'm going to be quite honest. I think someone that does maybe Gestalt work, but somatic work, EMDR, tapping, anything to get that person back in their body. Because if you can be in your body, you don't have to run from your body. And most therapists do. I don't think we are in this category, certainly not I, but do a lot of talk therapy, but nobody's helping people actually get in their bodies. And that's where it starts. And once you connect with yourself, you can connect with someone else. You can meet someone who is connected to themselves.
So what's your experience when you, I mean, this is a broad statement, but so maybe this just comes from an example, but when you are successful at helping a client experience that loss of self, it's like, what kind of response do you see from the client at that moment? That's a very pivotal moment in their process.
It's the waking up. It's becoming conscious. It's like, I have a program called Wake Up Recovery, and that's why I called it that, because it's about waking up.
That's perfect.
When I left my alcoholic, I was just disassociated. And so once I removed myself from that situation, because it became so toxic for me, I was like awake, like, oh my God, I've been like tunnel vision for so long, and now I'm like alive. So it's remarkable. It's incredible. It's like all of a sudden you hear birds chirp. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I think that's where it begins. And once you do that, really, the only way out is through consciousness, awareness, and diving deep into these early trauma vortexes, and doing it in a way with somebody that can help you embody yourself.
Well, Alan, I don't know anybody, when she's describing that, I don't know anybody who ever witnessed work does what she's describing better than you, in terms of just joining with somebody and just tracking with them. Just go, the idea of going with the client, not leading the client, but going with the client.
Yeah, that's a great description. Is that Gestalt therapy? I don't.
You're describing it. Well, it's very interesting. Gestalt therapy. Fritz Perls had a very unique experience. He and his wife Laura, they were part of that early psychoanalytic group, and in that psychoanalytic group, you had Wilhelm Reich, which was the father of all these body therapies. Right? Reichian therapy was the beginning of bioenergetics in the United States. And all the variations off of bioenergetics. Even Peter Levine's work, his somatic processing is connected to Lowen's work. I can see all kinds of connections when I see Peter Levine work in terms of what we're doing. And so the body, you're right. In cognitive behavioral therapy, you won't see it integrated in the same way you might see it integrated with like a Gestalt therapist or a body-oriented therapist. I mean, we don't have many pure body-oriented therapists around anymore, do we? I mean, that was the thing of the past. In the 70s, they were all over the place. You could go down on Santa Monica Boulevard and you walk into an office and it was padded all the way around because people were laying on the floor doing the pounding. And I mean, it's stuff like, remember the Bataka bats too?
Yeah,
The bats that we had on the tennis rackets on the pillow. I mean, all of that stuff of engaging people at that level that you were talking about, of their experience, is so important, because that's, look, like you said, if you don't have a self, one way to introduce yourself is to start paying attention to your somatic experiences.
Right. That's why I love Peter Levine's work, and that's what I use with clients. And, you know, it's not quite where you're, you know, banging on a pillow and doing that. It's more slow, and a lot of people can't get so uncomfortable doing it because it is so slow. Like, it's like asking someone to just be. That's like the hardest thing you can ask someone. So a lot of people don't stick with it, but if you stick with it, and I know this personally and professionally, it's a life changer. It really is.
Oh, it's the subtleties of that stuff too. I mean, and I'm not saying there wasn't great value, because there was. I was in all that stuff where the big dramatic experiential therapy back in the 70s and 80s, 90s. It's like screaming and hollering, snot flying everywhere, and you know, and when the situation calls for that, we can do that. But the idea of challenging somebody to be patient with that stuff from the inside out. It's like, but you know, I was thinking about this, and I can't remember the exact thing, but it's something you said to somebody on one of your Thursday night things. Sometimes it can be as subtle and as simple as just asking a question about where somebody feels something in their body.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even necessarily some big technique or whatever. It's like, it's just, you look at them and you can see that they're feeling it. Where do you feel it? You know, and they go like, oh, it's right in my chest, or right in my solar plexus. And it's like, and you'll see it's like, I was a magician for years. I used to do that. And it's like when you do that and that lands, it's like watching somebody see a magic trick. They go like, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, of course I didn't do that. I just asked you the question.
Now imagine with today's world of, you know, everything's so fast, the internet and texting and everything's electronic, and try to ask those young people to slow down like that. It's just unbearable for them. Mm-hmm. Like, even like my daughter with the COVID, she's 36, but she's, I can't sit around. I have things to do. I'm a high-powered publicist. I can't just sit at bed. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's what they want instant gratification. They want something now. And doing this work is not instant gratification. It is not.
Well, so from being an addict, I know about instant gratification. Oh, yes. Please, now, yeah.
Well, I want some instant gratifications. Tell us about Love Smacked.
Yes.
So Love Smacked, I came out in February. Actually, it came out. It's a reprint of a book called The Marriage Junkie, but I changed the title and I added another chapter on dating, and it's really, and they can find it on Amazon. It's about relationship addiction, being addicted to being in love, feeling. It's very similar to codependency. It's having this complete emptiness if you're not attached to someone. That's my addiction, codependency, love addiction. That would be mine in recovery. And it's just the fear of abandonment, a fear of being alone, having anxious attachment issues, always having to be in a relationship, just feeling like you're in the ethers of nothing if you're not in a relationship. So I go through that love addiction, what it is, and I have all kinds of amazing exercises and journaling and meditations and affirmations. It's almost like a workbook and a book all in one. And what I've heard mostly from people is it's just really easy to read, easy to understand, and it's for anybody. It's not heavy with lots of psychobabble. It's just like, this is what it is. This is how you work on it.
I love Marriage Junkie. So it's like, if it's that and more, I just want to recommend it to everybody, because that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the same
absolutely.
book, except I added the last chapter on dating. codependent or dating and relationship.
Title is great. I mean, love smacked. I mean, I love it.
Oh, and I looked at the covers. The cover's beautiful. I love the cover.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm pretty proud of it. I am. And so now I've taken a lot of those tools and I've put it into my membership, Wake Up Recovery, for codependency and toxic relationships. And I know in your show notes, you'll leave a link. And I also offer a free quiz. I mean, you just type my name and Google me and I'm everywhere, but I love to be of service. So take the quiz, the codependency quiz, it'll be in your show notes, and check out my book and check out my membership. And actually the membership, it has a week $1 trial. So it's $1 to join. And you guys know how hard it is to put these kind of things together. So it's like I'm giving it away, but you know what? I want to offer it to people so they can check it out first before they invest. And then it's $27 a month. And I go live twice a month. I do group coaching twice a month. And then it's just a treasure trove of all kinds of interviews that I've done throughout the years. And it's got a 10-week course called Wake Up Recovery. That's what we're talking about here. So it's amazing. And I love it.
Well,
It's my favorite.
I think you're amazing, and you're so generous. It's like that's one of the things I've just learned about you and felt about you when I first had any interaction with you, because you certainly were that way with me in terms of supporting some of the work I was doing at the time and helping people let people know about the stuff. I'm happy to put myself in a similar category that Alan and I talk about a lot of times. Is we really like the idea that whether somebody I always say, I want you to buy my books, I want you to give me money. Sure, give me money. But even if you don't, I want you to come away. If you're looking at my stuff, if you're going to my website, if you're going to that, I want you to come away with something that's of value. It's like, I'm not just here to just hawk this stuff. I'm here because this is the coolest thing in the world to get to do this for a living and be useful and helpful to people.
Yeah, we are so blessed. And I think what you're talking about just with each other is collaboration, really supporting each other's dreams,
right.
And as we help support our clients' dreams.
Right.
And this isn't competition. This is just, working together. We all have something to offer. There's room for all of us, every single one of us, to bring and to serve.
Right. Oh, I remember when I first had my first job in alcohol and drug counseling. It was actually long before I ever got sober, but I was going to help those drunks. But I remember the people I was working with were wonderful. These were old time AA guys that were running these programs, and we would meet with all the other agencies, on a regular basis. And it's like no competition at all. And what you'd hear from them all the time was, there's plenty of drunks to go around.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's plenty of all of this to go around. There's just, and people just, when you find, we just need to find the information is one thing, but finding the person or the persons that work best for you. Everybody's not going to, connect with Thom Rutledge, but they might with Sherry Gaba. It's
finding their tribe,
Yeah.
You need that support. I mean, the thing that works with the 12 steps is the tribe. So if it isn't that tribe, find another tribe. That's another reason why I created what I created. I want people to know there is a tribe for people struggling with codependency and toxic relationships. There is a place to go. And of course, there's also 12-step programs around the subject as well. So just try different things, see what works, see what fits.
Well, let people know about what Alan's doing with this Thursday night group, this emotional sobriety group. He started this because of the COVID stuff, and now Alan, you tell her what you're doing.
Please.
This is so important.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, two things happened. I said to myself, God, this is a time to be of service, just like you're talking about, Sherry. And what can I do now to try to pass on some of what I've learned to help people cope with what's going on? Thom and I started a whole video series, Surviving COVID. It was essentially what it was. And we filmed these 12 things together, and we just threw it out there for people to come to. And that spun off into this, into Start Right Here. But then the other thing I did simultaneously, concurrently, was to start a Thursday night meeting that I called Emotional Sobriety Anonymous.
Oh, I love it.
So from 7 to 8 p.m. every Thursday night, we get together. Last week, we had 158 people at the meeting.
Oh my God. And this is on Zoom?
It's on
Mhm.
Zoom. It's free. There's no dues or fees. We say the only requirement for membership is that you want to be there.
Mhm.
That's it.
Is so emotional sobriety. So do you have to be a sober person?
No, we're talking about just how to deal with your feelings, really. How do
Hmm.
you cope with emotions? Right now, what we're doing is, so we're about 9 months into it. We're taking a walk through the steps and relating them to emotional sobriety. And think of just emotional sobriety. The way I like to think about it is emotional autonomy, right? It's everything you're talking about in terms of how to take care of yourself, how to be in a relationship, not lose yourself, how to keep a hold of yourself. It's so similar to, that's why, Thom, when we were looking at your questions about, hey, these are
Yeah.
some of the things we could
I
talk
said
about.
this.
God, that's emotional sobriety. That's what we've been
Mhm.
talking about every
Mhm.
Thursday night. So there's
Mhm.
such a nice overlap between all of this stuff. And it's just another way to look at the same dynamic, right? What happens in relationship to somebody when it's not working out well.
Send me information and
I
I'll
will.
let my tribe know about it. And
Oh,
Yeah, and
good.
join us. And down the road, after we finish this, we have different speakers come in and they share a bit of their story or share something they want to share about how to take
Sherry would
better
be
care of
great. That'd be
yourself. Sure,
great.
it'd be wonderful to have.
Oh yeah.
congratulations, you guys. How wonderful to be
Mhm.
doing
So
that.
it's really been exciting. Thom's a
Mhm.
part of it. So
Yeah.
now we're alternating. We're going through the steps. We're on step 2. So Mary Gordon from the Betty Ford Center, she ran the family program for many, many years.
Oh, that's
So
the best program ever.
oh, isn't it? They do such a good job in that family program. But so Thom and Mary are alternating with me. And so Mary did step 1. Thom and I are doing step 2. Mary and I did step 1. And Mary will be back for step 3. And then Thom will be on step 4. And we're going that way through the steps. We're taking about 2 weeks on each step, right? We're going to do another week on step 2. By the way, what you did on step 2 this last time,
Mhm.
your 10 minutes, Sharon, bringing Father
Yeah.
Martin back into the discussion
Yeah.
it was wonderful, Thom.
Oh, good.
It was such, I
I
meant,
appreciate that because I really came away every time I speak in that group. I don't know what if I did good or not because I don't know how to speak to blank space. So when I don't have an audience, it's like it's hard to tell. So I appreciate that, and I'm glad. And God, I was so happy I went back to Father Martin. I just watched this 15-minute Father Martin tape, and it's like I go, oh my God, we got to stay with this guy.
You know what I'm thinking as you're talking, and I'm usually pretty intuitive, is this
Mhm.
would be a great entryway for people that aren't willing to do a 12-step program, maybe for an addiction, but they're willing to do it for emotional sobriety. And then they realize, oh my God, this program is awesome.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
I mean, that's just my thinking,
No,
right?
I think that's
Takes
right.
away the stigma we were talking about before.
Mhm.
I mean, so many people I work with that putting that label on themselves, I'm an addict or an alcoholic.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
they eventually saw a lot of people can get to that point once their experience takes them to rock bottom, and they say, "Well, I guess that's better than me just being a bad person. I'm an alcoholic, right?" Kind of a thing. But it's tough. You're right. I mean, that it's a big pill to swallow.
Well, you got to get to that decision. You and I talk about that recovery decision, Alan. And I think what Sherry you're saying is really right. It's like I always just go back to my first sponsor in AA that pointed out to me that he said there's 12 steps of recovery. He says this is where his exact sentence. One of them mentions alcohol.
Exactly.
He said the rest of them are, and this is what he said. He said the rest of them are about how to be a better person.
Yeah.
And I thought that has stuck with me ever since.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, how many people you do end up not converting, but at least exposing them to this, and then
Now,
seeing.
I want to convert them now. Let's convert them. I'm taking over. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. I think because you take people, you don't, yeah, my wife's an equine therapist, and I heard her say one time to a client that she just said this in this simple sentence. She just said, "I'll work with you, but not on you." And it's like I just always remember that because sometimes we even with our excitement, I can get so fired up about stuff like that. I think I get to a place where my energy is so much that I got to pull back because I'm working on that person, and I need to pull back and let no, this is let them in and let you find your way.
Yeah, and again, that's a codependent tenet, really, is to get out of your own way, not get out of your way, stop getting on someone else's path, stay on your own.
And get out of your own way. That one works too.
Yeah. This was great, guys. Is there anything else you want to ask?
What I want to acknowledge, Sherry, that I've always loved about you is how open and real and authentic you are about your own journey. And that to me it's so, first of all, so inspiring, but also so encouraging in terms of that you are someone who walks like you talk. I mean,
you guys are going to make me cry because I remember speaking on a panel with you. I really am. I'm getting choked up right now. And both of you are so highly respected. And then when I think, like I'm on the same podcast with these two guys, like how did that happen? And it's almost like I'm having an out-of-body experience because we don't always accept. I don't know if it's a self-esteem thing. I don't think that's what it is. I just think sometimes we don't realize what the difference we're making in the world. And so when
no, I think it's the humility and the gratitude back again. It's like, because I can feel the exact, I think that's fine. I think that's because I feel the same way about you. It's like, it's just where it's from where we're sitting. I can do the same thing. I can sit there and go like, I get to sit here and talk with Sherry Gaba and it's like, and it's, I don't know you that well, but I'm going like, I just jump in with both feet and talk to you like we're best friends and I'm honest and you're honest back. And what Alan's saying is absolutely right. What you do with being that way, it's a wonderful way to be in life, but what you do for your clients and all of your readers is that makes you safe.
Yeah, that's true. And really, I don't want to be up here and someone is down here. I want to co-create with someone. And as we were talking about presence, that is what co-creating is. And we don't make ourselves better or bigger or whatever. We're with you. We're together.
Right. So. That's what this has felt like today to me.
I think that this is what I'm imagining for you, Sherry, but it reminds me of an experience I had with my mentor, Dr. Kempler. See, I think you felt seen, is that somebody was seeing who you are and what's really important to you and what your true essence is. And I've seen that in you for a long time, just the commitment you have to not only being a professional, but being who you are and being committed to being real and to integrating your experience into your work, right? Being willing to share. I've been in a relationship with someone. I know what it's like to struggle when someone you love is relapsing all the time and you're in this zone of what am I going to do and feeling so threatened by this disease, that's now invaded the house and stuff like that. I love how you bring that in your work. But I remember one time, Walter, the guy that I trained with, was pretty crusty, right? And kind of he could really get in your face. And he was kind of one of those very, very confrontational therapists, but did it with a lot of support at the same time. But I remember someone turning to him in a workshop, and it was a real tough session he just had with someone. And the guy looked at him and said, I see how much you care for people. And he said it to Walter like that. Walt broke down and started crying.
He forgot to see that in himself.
That's right. See, he's so usually defending what he's doing and how caring that is that this guy just saw it and cut through all of that stuff. And it just, Walt melted down into a puddle of tears for a minute. He says, it feels so good to be seen.
Yeah.
For somebody to see me. And
isn't that really the therapeutic relationship?
That's the essence of it, isn't it? That we get to witness each other, see each other in a very special way. That's
beautiful. It's like, before I turn this over for you to close us out here today, Alan, I've decided to add a question at the end of our things, and that is, hey Patrick, did you have fun?
So you were a magician?
Yeah, I'll show you a magic trick sometime.
Yeah, but otherwise, great session or great episode. And
session. It's like a session. It's like a session. Yeah.
Another good session for me.
That's what it feels like, man. It's like, that's good.
It's all just a hustle to get some therapy. Yeah.
I love it.
Now, Thom and I are going to have to disclose this. The only reason we did this was to help you, Patrick. These have been sessions for you to try to add to your growth. And look at Thom. See, he's
This is like the Truman Show of therapy.
That's right.
That's it.
It's all about you, buddy. It's like good morning, good afternoon, good night. It's like,
But
So-
thank you so much, Sherry, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. And I just love the chemistry you guys all have. It's awesome.
well, we couldn't do it without Patrick, that's for sure. So
Yeah, Patrick.
I'd love to.
Everybody needs a Patrick. How do we get a Patrick?
I know. I
Alan
found-
already had a Patrick.
I found
I didn't
it
have
him.
one. Yeah,
I feel like I found me a little diamond, and
right. Well, I've got no people, so it's like it's beautiful to know Patrick.
it is. Patrick's been. You have been. Maybe Thom and I don't say it on the air enough. I know I try to communicate it to you, but you are incredibly valuable to what we do, Patrick. Thank you.
Very professional. This whole thing, the whole, contacting me, setting it up, the whole thing, very professional. Excellent. I think this is going to be if it isn't already, and I know you're on your way, it's going to be a great success.
Yeah, good.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you, Sherry. We want you back. We'll get you back in here if you will come.
When I start my podcast, you will be on my podcast.
Ah,
Yay!
wait.
We'll do it.
Can't wait. All right, so I'll take us out of here. So, Sherry,
All right.
how do they learn more about your work? What can people do? They can obviously Google you.
Yes. Find my book, Love Smacked, on Amazon, and Wake Up Recovery for Codependent and Toxic Relationships. Without reading out the link, just look at the show notes for this show. The show notes are on the app, right? Or where can they find the show notes? Right on the little graphic of the show? Where is
Mhm, I think
I'm
so.
going to put it in the show description or the episode description.
Okay, yeah. So there's that, and then get your free quiz and get your free ebook, The Truth About Codependency. So those 3 links will be in the show description, and that's where they'll find me.
Great.
Great.
Thom, how do they learn?
I'm still at ThomRutledge.com. They haven't kicked me out of that. I'm there. There's my books. There's some free things you can come and download. You can also check out my thing called Therapy for Politics. That's there, and in the name of hoping to heal our some of our bigger problems with our nation. And yeah, I'll be there.
I had to smile when you said that haven't kicked me out yet. About
Mhm.
4 years ago, when I was at the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference, Albert Ellis was there, and he had just been kicked out of the Albert Ellis Institute. I mean,
it's only right.
how do you get kicked out of your- how do you get kicked out of your own institute? I mean,
Here's how you do it. Be Albert Ellis. It's like
Oh, and what happened to that conference? I mean, not that we're doing
still happening. It's virtual this year, which is it's
Mhm.
starting actually this next week.
Oh, are you still part of that? Like, is that still your thing?
Oh, you're thinking about the Evolution of Addiction Treatment conference that I started with Andrew Martin. That's going to be happening. Thom's and I are going to be doing a
Mhm.
workshop there virtually. That's still happening. C4 Recovery took it over.
Mhm.
Okay, I got it.
Raw and that whole group as they're continuing, and they're going to make it a yearly event.
Great.
And we have to say, Alan, that when the C4 took it over, it did occur to us that it seemed like maybe you were getting kicked out, that we were getting fired after you had handed over your little baby that you had raised to that point, and go like, we're over here.
I mean, Alan, I remember, I don't know how many years ago, you sitting in my backyard and we were talking about the conference.
We were talking about the conference. We were talking about, remember, I had that media packet I was sharing with you that I went and did some media training with someone, and we were talking, you were just starting to say, I want to do this stuff. I want to get into this. And you've become a master at it. I look back and I sit there and I say, my God, I'm learning from you now.
No, she's good.
I haven't mastered the speaking in person. I think I've mastered being, a summit host, a radio interviewer.
You did a fantastic job of all that. But look, at even this interview today, you were, I love how real you were in this thing, and you shared some things that I think can be quite helpful to people today.
Right. Well, I
So
will
if
come.
you want to find out about my work, just go to my website. It's www.abphd.com. Alpha, Bravo, Paul Henry David. Whenever I say that, I feel like I'm calling in artillery coordinates for
No, I feel like I should duck.
Alpha, Bravo, Paul Henry David. Fire for effect. That's my Vietnam days. I'm still got some post-traumatic stuff. So you can check us out there and join us on Thursday nights. Come and participate in emotional sobriety, the Zoom code and the password will also be in the episode notes.
Deep in your heart, start right here. That's where it starts. Right